I will start today with a question. What is modesty? What is modesty? Can you define for me modesty? Humbleness? Close? Enough? Modesty. Modesty is the quality of being moderate, limited, or small in amount, rate, or level. This is very elaborate, right? So, modesty is the quality of being moderate, limited, or small. The question is, can you add value to modesty? When we talk about modesty, it's like, oh yeah, we have, to be limited, to be small. But do you have value when you have something small? Well, when you think of a diamond, it's small, but the value is high. There are things that are, but having a diamond is not modest at all. But the value, right? The value is great. What I mean is if you have a limited or small amount of anything, can you work with this limitation to make it valuable? Yes. The answer is yes. Well, I was thinking of Naomi. Naomi is limited, but she can love like nobody else. And from my perspective, she transformed her handicap in something very valuable. We meet people that, they cannot express their love, but she expresses her love very well by pulling your hair. It's good for me because I don't have hair. So maybe you've heard about Nicholas Vujicic. He's an Australian Christian evangelist and motivational speaker. He's born with a syndrome, a rare syndrome or disorder characterized by the absence of arms and legs, right? But he transformed his limitation into something valuable for others. He's a motivational speaker. At least he has a mouth. And he talks. And he challenges people around. Today, Rolika showed me something interesting. In Romania, there are teachers who travel by foot 4 hours to reach an isolated village with 3 students. A school with 3 students. So they go there for 4 hours by foot. They stay for 5 days, and then they come back to their house another 4 hours just to spend the weekend, and then they go back there for 3 students. 3 little kids. That's something. I mean, they transformed the limitation of that class into a gold mine. I like that. The miners work hard and they die young for us to have coal, but our life would be different without their sacrifice. So they transform their limitation into something highly valuable. There are little churches that invest quality in members, and sometimes the members just go somewhere else, and other churches, they enjoy the foundation that, that little church in that village or whatever they pour into. So they succeeded to transform their limitation into something valuable. Are we called to add value to modesty? I believe yes, we are called to add value to modesty. Sometimes this process gets us to despair and disappointment, but as Christians, we are called to add value to the modest numbers, resources, and mindset we have. So, modesty can be valuable when you have a heart for this. And I've learned that from my point of view, the apostle of modesty was Andrew. He succeeded to add value to modesty in his life and the life of others, and the method was to present them to Jesus. So he added value to modesty by presenting them to Jesus. It's very simple. I should shut and then let's go home. We have the solution. Let's go home. Everything what was important was said. Present them to Jesus and let's go home. But Andrew, his name means Andre. Do you know the meaning of your name? I was about to say, and I was like, oh, I will ask first.
Not really, to be honest.
Andrea?
Manly.
Yeah, manly. And Andrew was a robust man. He was a fisherman, remember? Big guy with a big heart. He was bold, courageous, prudent, but he also was contemplative, supporter of others, and very spiritual. He was always eclipsed by his brother Peter, but he was not bothered by this. He was like, sure, I can live in his shadow, no problem. He loved to be the second line, to be the support line for the others, the line where you have time to think and act and bring balance to the group. We know that Andrew was part of the group of the leaders. Remember the first group, the leaders among the 12? The other ones, Peter, James, and John, they were reckless. But he was the balance of the group. He brought balance in this group of crazy people. He was a real man, a real leader. He was secure and balanced. He was always in the background giving a hand of help. Hey, I want to help you, when the others were going crazy. Andrew took time with Peter to follow John the Baptist. Andrew was John the Baptist, the disciple in the beginning. And Peter too. Peter was also, if you remember, very spiritual and interested into the Messiah current that was there. And he said, when Andrew presented this option, hey, we found the Messiah, Peter was ready to go. Both of them, they were interested and they were following John the Baptist. But John the Baptist was a man of few manners, preaching in the desert without comfort and compromise. It was not easy to follow him as a disciple. It was kind of hard to follow a man like this, and it was hard not to borrow from his personality traits some. So Andrew was interested in truth. I believe that this is the reason why John the Baptist was a man after his own heart. Following John the Baptist, Andrew and Peter started to know better James and John. And finally, they were friends and also partners, business partners. Andrew and John witnessed the baptism of Jesus from Nazareth. When he came from Nazareth, Jesus was baptized. And when John the Baptist said, look, this is the Lamb of God, Andrew and John went after him. And they became the first followers of Jesus Christ. They followed him, and Jesus had like a rented house in Capernaum, and they stayed with him from that time on. Next day, Andrew went to Peter, to his brother, and said, hey, we found the Messiah. And second day, why I'm saying second day, because if you read John, let's read. John 1, verses 41 and 42. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, we have found the Messiah, which means Christ. He brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, you are Simon the son of John. You shall be called Cephas, which means Peter. But when you read this, like verse 39, he said to them, come, you see, and you will see. So they came and saw where he was staying, and they stayed with him that day. for it was about the 10th hour. The 10th hour. I mean, how do we know that was Andrew and John? Maybe you think, oh, how do you know it was John? Because John is the only one talking about this, and he gives details like it was 4 p.m. 10th hour was 4 p.m. So he remembered exactly the hour when he met Jesus. But next day, Simon was brought to Jesus by Andrew and said, hey, we found the Messiah. It's not a surprise why these four men were always together, because they were friends, business partners, and they knew each other from John the Baptist when they followed him. They were part of the group of the apostles. They were the closest to Jesus. And although they shared the leadership of the entire group of 12, Peter was dominant and Andrew was the support part of this group. Now I think you have the general idea what happened in that group because of Andrew. Talking about leadership in church, Andrew would be a better model for church leadership than Peter. I mean, imagine Peter cutting everyone and, talking without thinking. But Andrew was, always in an obscure place thinking, and when he says two words, these two words were like gold. So, because in the church we have so many ministries that are obscure like his, they will never be known for their success, although we cannot exist without these ministries. So I think your ministry matters. If you are up front here or right there doing something else like, translating or slides or whatever, your ministry matters. Well, Andrew, his life, I was thinking, how should what's the topic? And I was thinking about his life, and then suddenly I thought, okay, how to add value to modesty. And first of all, I think you can add value to modesty by presenting small numbers to Jesus. When you have modest numbers, it's very easy. Just tell them about Jesus. Andrew was the apostle who understood the importance of individuals. When we see Andrew in the Gospels, he's not searching for multitudes, he's searching for individuals, for people. He brought individuals, not multitudes, to Christ. And I think this is awesome. Being always in the background, he had another perspective on things than the other apostles. First of all, he brought one person to Jesus, and that person, the first person that he brought to Jesus was his brother. So bring your relatives to Christ. I think it's very easy, it's very clear. This is what Andrew did. He had an authentic love for his brother, although his brother was too annoying at times, but he really loved him. And he brought Simon to Jesus, and after their first encounter with Jesus, they went back to their business fishing. And after Jesus cleansed the temple in Jerusalem, he came back in Galilee, and he saw them and said, Andrew and Simon, come follow me. I'll make you fishermen. Ooh, you will catch people, not fish. And then, after them, Jesus called James and John. And after a while, they went back to their trade. And finally, Jesus saw them, and he made like a miracle. And then they realized we need to follow him 100%. So they were full-time followers of Christ, or disciples. And then Andrew became one of the apostles. So this is his short history. But how important was to bring a person to Christ? Is it important to bring just one person to Christ? I believe so. Why? Well, his brother, Simon Peter, preached a sermon to a multitude, and 3,000 at Pentecost, 3,000 persons got baptized. Imagine that baptism, 3,000 people. This baptism transformed the Jerusalem church into an international church with 18 different languages and nations. After a while, they went back home, and we know that the church in Rome was founded by these believers. So you have Andrew here, and then his brother, and then the Pentecost, and there are 3,000, and then the church in Rome. But in the beginning, you have Andrew, because he brought one person to Christ. I think it matters. What is the secret to add value to modesty? Well, bring one person to Christ. It's easy. Not a multitude. But also, Andrew had the ability to see one person in the multitude. If you open the Gospel of John to the 6th chapter, verses 1 to 13, we don't have enough time to read the whole thing, but maybe you are able to read it. And maybe you already know about when Jesus feeds the 5,000. We are too impressed with multitudes, but Andrew was able to see one person, not the multitude. When the other apostles were overwhelmed by the multitudes they were to feed, Andrew saw just one boy, not even an adult. He saw one boy, and he said, "Hey, we have a lunch here." Andrew brought this boy to Jesus, and the problem was solved. I think the challenge here is what you see, what I see. What do I see? Do you see the multitudes, or you see one person who needs to surrender to Jesus something? In Andrew's situation, the boy needed to surrender his lunch. So we think, surrender your life. Well, Andrew was, surrender your lunch. And Jesus will do something with that lunch. Do we see this? Sometimes we are too blind. We see just the multitudes and, whoa, it's awesome. But Andrew saw just one boy. One little boy. You know why Andrew saw a boy in the multitude? Because his eye was trained to see individuals. His eyes were trained to see individuals, to look for modesty, limited and small numbers. When you train your eye to see the value of the limitations, Jesus is ready to transform your modesty in success. And Jesus transformed that little lunch into a big lunch for everybody. The secret is to see one person and to bring that person to Christ, and He will take care of everything. I love this. But also Andrew had the ability to see the man-made limitations. You see, everything is about limitations, about modesty. John 12, we have another story about Andrew. John 12, verse 20 to 22. We'll read this because it's just a short text. Philip went and told Andrew. Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. Told about what? There were some Greeks, and they came to Philip, probably because they knew him, probably because Philip spoke Greek, and they were confident to talk with him. But Philip was not confident to bring them to Jesus. Maybe he thought, if Jesus will repel them, he is Jew, he speaks Greek, but I don't know. So he went to Andrew, and Andrew said, "Oh yeah, sure. Let's go with them, and let's introduce them to Jesus." Why? Because Andrew knew something about Jesus. He hadn't rejected anybody by now, not even the Greeks. Or the Gentiles. The Greeks were more than one, so it was like a group of them, but they were from another category. They were not Jews, they were Greeks. Without any hesitation, Andrew brought them to Jesus, and he became the first missionary among the non-Jews. Not Peter, not even Paul. Andrew is the first one who brought the good news to others, or others to the good news. It's the same thing. Andrew had a healthy perspective about God's kingdom, and he knew that Jesus will take time to talk with these Greeks. By the way, Jesus not just took time to talk with them, but he said that the hour for him arrived, is fulfilled, because of this visit. You remember the wedding at Cana? You know, when Jesus went to that wedding and his mother said, "Oh, help them, they don't have wine anymore." You remember this? You remember what Jesus answered? "Women, this is not my time." You know, and now he said, "My time. This is the hour for what I came here." So what was the hour? What was the time? His death. And she was kind of trying to push Jesus to do something against his will. And he said, "This is not my hour." And now he said, "Yes, this is the hour." And he was talking about his death because we are in Palm Sunday. This is after Jesus' triumphal entry in Jerusalem, and a group of Greeks looked for Jesus to talk with him. And I love this situation. But Jesus took time to talk with them, and he did. And then, I love this because I know Jesus talked in Greek with them. Jesus knew 3 languages at least. Aramaic, and he could read also Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, and then Greek, and then Latin. Remember when he talked to Pilate? He talked in Latin. Jesus was polyglot. Yeah. And this is the situation when the Greeks came, he talked with them without translation. He talked directly to them. We have seen that modest numbers are not modest when you bring them to Jesus. Sometimes the family is a limitation. Sometimes the multitude can be a limitation. Sometimes the way we put people in categories is a limitation. And what you do with your modest numbers and limitations, what do you do with them? Bring them to Jesus. He knows what to do with the limitation. But also, Andrew was a man who discovered, and he had like modest or limited resources. If we go back to John chapter 6, to the same situation when he was preaching to a multitude of 15,000 people, he asked the apostles to feed them. And John 6, then he said, and Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so these people may eat?" And Philip answered, "We have 200 denarii worth of bread." 200 denarii was the salary of a person for 8 months. So you work 8 months and you have 200 denarii, and said, "We don't have enough money to feed this multitude." Now, Andrew instead brought a boy with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. This is less than 1 denarii. So Philip said, "You see, we have 200 denarii and we can feed the multitude." But Andrew came with the boy and said it was not even his lunch. He said, "Lord, this boy is like, his lunch is like less than a denarii." But I cannot accuse Andrew that he was about to fail math that day. Not at all. I believe that he was thinking something like this: if we cannot do much with 200 denarii, a lunch that is less than 1 denarii would be enough to bring it to Jesus. He will know what to do with it. By the way, Jesus was able to make bread from the rocks. I believe that. And I was on that hill. There are plenty of rocks there. He could do that. but he didn't. He accepted the lunch, and he did the miracle. Why? Because Andrew was different than the other apostles. He was thinking supernaturally. Too many times we're like the 11 apostles, not like Andrew. So we have 11 here and we have Andrew here. We are too bound to this world that we don't understand anymore how bound we are. And we think just naturally, oh, this is impossible. But Andrew is the apostle of, no, it's possible. With God's help. Because of supernatural. We have Christians that are too natural, and they said, oh, it's impossible. No more miracles today. But we have Christians that are just miracles, miracles. I believe that we need to be somewhere in the middle. Andrew was very balanced. And he knew that what Jesus can do. At the end of the meal, Jesus asked the apostle to clean the area, and they gathered up leftovers, fragments, that nothing to be lost. The text said this. And they gathered how many baskets? How many baskets? Come on. 1? Who gives more?
12.
12! We don't have 12. 12 baskets. For each apostle, 1 basket. And now I imagine what was in the apostles' minds when they were thinking, looking at that basket with fragments, full of fragments of bread. Nothing is modest in Jesus' hands. He can transform a modest lunch into something big. Nothing is modest in Jesus' hands. There is anything you want to surrender to Jesus right now? How about and when I say modest, think of limited, okay? How about your modest job? Just surrender to Him. Your modest salary, your modest skills, modest house, modest time, modest family, modest people skills, modest talent, modest effort, modest church, modest leadership, your modest lunch, modest clothes, or modest life, and the list, could go on. When you surrender your resources to Jesus, the leftovers will come in baskets. Think about this. When you surrender your resources to Jesus, the leftovers will come in baskets, not in bags. Jesus is able to feed you and another 15,000 people with your job, salary, skills, house, time, family, people skills, talent, effort, church, leadership, lunch, clothes, life. It's only a matter of surrender. Just like that. So, what do you do with your modest or limited resources? The answer is give it to Jesus. Maybe next time I'll ask you, all of you will answer, give it to Jesus. We know what to do with them. He knows. Sometimes we don't know, but He knows what to do with them. And for this, I praise Jesus. The giver's faithfulness when the sacrifice is made, not the amount of gift, is the real measure of the gift. So, are we faithful? Giving to Jesus everything. You remember that it was like a lady, an old widow, and rich people came and they were throwing money and this lady brought 2 coins. And Jesus said she gave more than all of them because she gave it all, everything. So it's a matter of faithfulness. It's not the amount of gift. If you have small, or limited or modest resources, in Jesus' hands, they will not be modest anymore. But also, Andrew was adding value to his modesty, not with modest resources or with modest numbers, but he added value to his modest mindset, a modest mindset. In Mark 9:35, Jesus said, and that was another war about leadership. You remember when they were arguing who is the first? Probably the whole argument started from this group of 4 of leaders. Jesus said, if anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all. This is the secret of a ministry well done. When you don't care about the praise of the people, but you care about how faithful you are when you minister, there are not many Andrews in the church. This is our problem. We don't have many Andrews. Too many work for Christ to be praised and appreciated. Too less of Andrews we have. And at the end of the day, they will say, I have done what I was supposed to do. Luke 17:10 says, so you also, when you have done all that you were commanded, say, we are unworthy servants. We have only done what was our duty. That was Andrew. We need more of the Andrew's mindset in the church. That mindset that looks for individuals, introduce them to Jesus. The mindset that takes limited resources and give it to Jesus. And that mindset that will, after everything is done, they will say, I was an unworthy servant. I have only done what was my duty to do. You know what happens when you have such a mentality? You decrease and Jesus increase. Who said that? Remember who said that? I must decrease and Jesus must increase. Who said that?
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist. So you see, Andrew actually lived what John said. He remembered, I need to decrease, he will increase. So it's a matter of faithfulness. Do you find ways to decrease so that Jesus may increase? If yes, then you are an Andrew. And the church of Jesus Christ is blessed to have you, because this is a healthy way to see discipleship. You know how much he decreased? Well, we know from Eusebius, he said that Andrew went to Scythia, which is in the southern Russia, and around the Black Sea to preach the gospel. Actually, I've been in Romania. There is a cave. I've been there. There is a cave. Supposedly, Andrew was there, and he preached the gospel to the Romanians. But we know he was in the southern part of Russia. After that, he went to Ephesus to be with his old friend and business partner, John the Apostle. And then he came back in Greece, and he arrived in the southern part of Greece, where preaching the gospel to a lady. Her name was Maximila, the wife of the proconsul Aegeates. I don't know how to say that, but it's something like this. She became a Christian. And it is said that this governor of Parchis became enraged at Andrew for his preaching and ordered him to stand before the court in his attempt to do away with the Christian faith. When Andrew resisted the tribunal, the governor ordered him to be crucified. Andrew remained tied to the cross with thick ropes for 3 days, and his last words were, this is from the church history, I hope this is true, but it's like from an old source. Accept me, O Christ, whom I saw, whom I love, and in whom I am. Accept my spirit in peace in your eternal realm. Andrew was crucified on a cross, and instead of being made like, the cross that was Jesus crucified on, he was crucified like in an X, the cross like this. Even today is called the Saint Andrew's cross. He decreased until his death because he wanted to show Jesus Christ. By the way, I read another article about his death, and during these 3 days when he was on the cross, he was preaching the gospel, still preaching the gospel to the people that they were passing by. Well, in conclusion, if you love your relative, bring them to Jesus. Who knows if they are not another Simon Peter? Nobody knows. Look for the individuals, not for the multitudes. And the question is, how many individuals you brought to Jesus because you knew they have something to surrender to Him? Maybe their lunch. Sometimes we are not efficient in our ministry because of our man-made limitations. And I believe that every category of people need Christ, need Jesus. Politicians, teachers, prostitutes, drug-addicted people, all of them, they need Jesus. Believe that your limited and modest resources in Jesus' hands will exceed your expectations. So, give it to Jesus. Develop a mindset of modesty, because you and I, we are just servants. When you do something, it's just because you have done your duty. Nothing more, nothing less. It's all because of Christ. Expect to be persecuted for the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's not yours. The good news belongs to Jesus. You are just the messenger. But there are some people who will reject good news. They don't need the good news. And you know why? And we talked about that. It's because they don't know the bad news. So bring the bad news. Bring the good news. And expect to be even persecuted. Andrew was persecuted and he died because of the good news of Jesus Christ. In this way, you will add value to modesty, like Andrew. May the Lord help us to do this in our lives. The church needs more Andrews. So, let's do this. We have plenty of time. Do we? Oh yeah. We have plenty of time to have small groups. And let's have 2 small groups and like feedback small groups. Each one of you tell to the group what did you learn today. If something new or something you already knew about Andrew, but that thing that maybe grasped your attention and right now you are thinking about this.